Welcome back to the Madison Advisory AI podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Verner Thompson, founder of Madison Advisory AI. This show sits at the intersection of leadership, judgment, and technology, because while AI and automation are accelerating decisions everywhere, it's still human systems that determine whether those decisions create real value. Today's conversation is about one of the most consequential decisions a founder ever makes: selling their business. Not just the transaction itself, but the judgment, trust, and emotional discipline required to get a deal across the finish line. I'm joined by Todd Hutchinson, managing partner at MDR Associates, where he spent more than 2 decades advising founders through business exits, often in moments where deals die more than once and have to be brought back to life. Todd brings a perspective shaped less by automation and more by experience, presence, and human alignment. And today we're going to explore what still matters most when the stakes are high and the process is deeply personal. Todd, thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You've been advising founders through exits for, over 20 years now. When you look back at your work, what has stayed constant even as markets and tools have changed?
I think just building that personal relationship with the founder, the owner, I think that's been the most important thing, in our space. It's not the quickest sale in the world. It takes months of prep, sometimes years of prep. A lot of times we say that we engineer closings because sometimes we get with the owner 12 to 18 months before they're even considering selling. So it's building that personal relationship over time, I think, has been the key to our success.
And you've described your role as similar to a sports agent, guiding a big contract in someone's life. Why does that analogy resonate for you?
I think it's because when you look at a sports agent and an athlete, that's their job is to talk with the sports owner, which in our case would be the buyer, right? Buying the business. And they know what the athlete, and in our case, the founder or the owner, is looking for that contract. So we're the one right in the middle on both sides, trying to get both parties to the perfect middle. We call it a win-win-win, right? Mm-hmm. So just like a sports agent, they do all the negotiating. They handle all the contracts. That's our job as well. As far as our owners, we consider them athletes. We just want them kind of to stay on the sidelines, let us work on their behalf, and we will bring them every change or offer that's given to them and be right there in the middle the whole time.
After nearly 2 decades in the industry myself, I hadn't heard that analogy before, and I do love it. I think it's very fitting. And having been through these deals, and you've described it, deals often die multiple times during the process. What usually causes those small deaths, if you will, if it's not the numbers?
Usually it's just something that's forgotten. Either a key employee is leaving, or we had a deal last year where the owner really never had a leasing agreement in their 4 locations. And one of those landlords just tried to kill the deal by not giving him a lease. And so, that stopped the bank doesn't go forward. You had to literally stop the whole deal and negotiate with someone who's outside of the deal. In fact, this landowner wanted a percentage of the deal for the new lease. And so you have to really just sometimes whenever the phone rings, you just don't know what's on the other end, whether it's an accountant, a lawyer, a landowner, the bank. There's always something that comes up that we just didn't anticipate or weren't aware of.
It's uncanny how many different individuals or companies you end up negotiating with, not just what you think really being the buyer and necessarily the seller. What's generally the most common human breakdown you see in the final stretch?
I just think doubt and regret. This is a very personal decision for the owner. They're basically leaving everything they've known for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years sometimes. And a lot of times we work with older clients, for the most part, people in their 60s and 70s. And so health becomes a factor, not knowing if, this closing is going to keep it. But there's so much emotion attached to the decision that a lot of times we're just what we call trying to get them off the ledge of jumping off and not doing the deal or making a decision that would hurt the deal. So it's very emotional.
It is, and often founders describe businesses as their babies, and it's almost like a familial relationship, and they don't know how to necessarily leave. You mentioned in our conversations that at one point a tone of voice almost derailed the deal. What does that say about how fragile alignment can be?
It happens a lot, whether it's an attorney or a banker or an accountant, or even sometimes we get kind of, because we're human too, we get impatient when it's in the 10th, 11th, 12th month, and this should have been done already, but things keep popping up. So it's very important through the whole process that everybody kind of keeps an even tone. And the old saying, it's not personal, it's business. but you just have to be aware of everybody's emotions all the time during the process, or it will derail with somebody's attitude or saying something wrong or just not knowing what to say at the time.
A lot of it does really depend on those fragile moments about the trust that you have developed over, the 6-12 months that you've been working with the team. And that does speak to your firm's strategy and alignment with your own clients. You typically limit the number of deals the firm takes on, and you can turn away potentially clients. What are you screening in potential clients that other investment banks may be missing?
Well, for us personally, because we value our time and time with our family and time outside of everything, so we really want to focus on deals that we know are absolutely going to close. So as far as the founder, the owner goes, we put them through probably 4 to 6 hours of interviewing to assure not only themselves but ourselves that they are ready to retire, to sell this business, that there isn't anything that would change their mind in the process. So we take a real slow approach on bringing on a client, and we really only work with 2 or 3 a quarter because we want all of our time being able dedicated to those individual clients during the process.
How soon in the process or in the interviews do you typically know whether a founder is truly ready to sell?
Typically within the first 10, 15 minutes. We do. I'd say our first discovery meeting either lasts an hour and a half to 2 hours or 20 minutes. Okay. We pretty much know right away that they're ready, but a lot of times you still need that extra 2 or 3 hours to hear the things that we want to hear from the owner to convince us that they will go through the process.
And sometimes it takes those extra few hours for the founder themselves to become internally aligned when they may be on the fence. What has happened when someone does say they're ready, but explicitly really aren't?
It happens. I think I mentioned earlier in our conversation, we have about a 94% closing ratio. And the reason it's not 100% is because we have had owners within the 5th or 6th month just change their mind.
It's painful.
Sometimes it's that we were told that the son doesn't want to take over, and then halfway through the process, the son does want to take over, or the daughter wants to take over, and so they change their mind. So it does happen. You're never 100% sure, but you got to get as close as possible, because when the pitfalls happen and things happen that kill the deals, you want to make sure that your owner is still committed.
And this is the Madison Advisory AI podcast, so I'm going to take a turn here to technology and AI. Founders today are flooded with AI-generated outreach and automated deal marketing. From your perspective, what's the unintended consequence of that?
They become numb to it because they get so many, just like all of us in our social media and our emails. I think I delete probably 40 emails a day that are unsolicited. I may have gone to the site one time. And, so I think with AI, because the generation gap is changing from, baby boomers to Generation X, it'll be a lot easier, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years regarding AI. But the clients that we have are pretty old school. Most of them don't know what Facebook is and Instagram, and they don't really check their emails. And so in that sense, I think the baby boomers are harder to reach, but I think the next generation will be easier to reach with the AI marketing.
Interesting. And I can see how the baby boomer generation would tend to shy away or not be interested in AI marketing or the less personal feel, perhaps, of a automated email. What tools do you think do help in terms of your process?
Well, as far as marketing, you mentioned before, we only market really two ways, and that's through our networking. We call our referral associates. So we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of referral associates we've built over the last 2 decades through network marketing and meetings and past clients. And then we have a radio show which airs once a week, and that's really been a game changer for us because once again, the baby boomers, our target market right now, listens on radio. And so they hear our show and they call us immediately after the show gets off, and we engage with them.
That's great. And that is something that's very unique about your firm is that you do have a radio show and not even a podcast, if you will, a live radio show. And I think that's very unique. And do you think with AI and tools being more prominent that there's been any trust lost in the investment banking world?
I don't know if there's any trust loss. I think what happens with all new technology is we get flooded by it. And so for an individual, no matter what you are, like, who do I trust? Do I trust this AI? Do I trust this AI? There's so many companies now getting on the AI bandwagon. Who do you go to? Who do you trust? No one really has a track record yet. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's not that it isn't useful and helpful and can get things done. I think it's a human thing to just not trust and let things settle out a bit. So I don't know when we will come to the point where we're like, oh, well, this is good. I trust this. I'm going to use this, and it's been effective.
On the other side of the coin, when you're reaching out to potential buyers, are you finding interest on their end, whether your sellers are impactfully using AI or certain technologies?
I think when we're talking about buyers, I think more of the private equity companies, the larger firms, they're already integrated with AI, right? So they're looking at a company that is either in the beginning stages or have already committed to using AI in some aspect of their company. It would be, a financial buyer or an individual. Just depends on that individual if they're currently using it in their system and looking for the business that they're buying.
And we've talked about how prevalent it is for private equity buyers to be reaching out directly to founders. Do you find that that's even more prevalent these days with automation and AI tools?
Yeah, I think every owner that we have in our boardroom and talk to, they tell us, how many people have already reached out to them either via phone or email or some sort of they're being flooded daily by offers for their company. They just don't know who they are. They just know that they're getting contacted by them daily.
Right. And I have talked to others in the industry that have the same experience where founders are being inundated with private equity offers for their business. And the founders themselves start to think about moving forward with a potential transaction. And given this environment of AI guidance and help and tools, they perhaps think that an investment banker isn't necessary. How do you navigate that mindset?
I mean, automation is great. Technology is great. And I think for a lot of industries, it can do, the majority of work and help. When it comes to our industry, I think we're still such a personal transaction that as much technology as we can use, AI is not going to get on the phone with my owner and talk him off the ledge. That has to be me. I can't send him I can go to Chat GPT and find, the 10 best ways to talk to an owner off the ledge AI, but it's my voice, it's my tone, it's the comfort level that the owner has with me over the last 6 months that becomes the difference now.
And I think that's one thing that is difficult to perhaps communicate in investment banking, is exactly how close that relationship is between the founder or owner and the investment banker, that multiple times throughout a process, you really do have to talk them off a ledge, potentially. And I do find that one of the hardest things to effectively communicate when someone is thinking about to hire an investment banker or not hire an investment banker, because you don't want to tell someone that you may be near a nervous breakdown by the end of this process if you don't have guidance.
It's a stigma. I think there's a lot of industries. I mean, use my example of sports agents. Most people don't have a high tolerance or understanding of sports agents, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just think they're the guy running around between rooms in the suit, right? We don't really know who they are, their personalities. They're not really in the spotlight, maybe one or two. And in our industry, it's the same way. I mean, I think overall business brokers, mergers and acquisitions have this weird stigma about we're stuffy, we're Ivy League, we're unapproachable, and that may be the case in some instances. But to do this business, you have to be personable. You have to be trustworthy. And I think that's why, like we mentioned before, all of our meetings with the buyer and seller are in person.
Yeah.
And that's how we build trust. So when the things come up that may kill the deal, those two parties have already met 2 or 3 times and have grown to like each other and trust each other through that personal relationship.
How did you navigate that during COVID, or did you take a break from the solely in-person meetings?
The COVID just halted all things. I think we only sold maybe 2 businesses that year, during the COVID year, because people were just, it wasn't that they weren't going to sell their company, they were just like everybody else. They were kind of in a haze of, is life going to go on, or is this the end? So banks weren't talking, owners weren't talking. We had a real hard time doing that just because of our model.
Mm-hmm.
And because we did everything in person. So it was one of our hardest years to get through, but we got through it and came out the other side.
We all did get through it. I had the luxury of negotiating or working on an earnout during COVID, and that was a joy in and of itself. But COVID changed our business for certain, and I do think that's where Zoom has become more prevalent, for better or worse, but I can really see the value that you bring having all of the meetings that you do in person.
We do Zoom meetings. It's just when that's the only thing we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Like about 2-3 weeks ago, a deal died a day before closing. That's always fun. And we had to do an emergency Zoom meeting to get everybody back on the same page.
Which is much better than an emergency telephone call. So that at least we have that capacity.
Yeah.
When for a founder that's listening who's considering or thinking about an exit in the next few years, what's one thing that you wish they understand or would understand by then?
I think for the most part, you have to make sure that your company is ready. So, like, there's several factors that private equity companies and buyers are looking for in a company. I think most business owners don't realize the 8 to 10 markers in their company that have to be moving in the right direction. So a lot of times the reasons we turn down clients is because 4 or 5 of those markers, they just are in shambles. And so it's going to hurt their value. It's going to hurt the buyers, the number of buyers that are looking in that company. So for us, we also like getting with business owners 12, 18 months before they're considering the sale. We can get in there as a consultant and get their business ready to sell. They maybe have a profitable company,
Mm-hmm.
but it just may be an absolute turmoil once we lift the hood. The numbers are great, but if they got no key employees, they have no policies and procedures, Nobody knows what anybody else is doing. It's an absolute mess. It's going to be difficult to sell.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the most misunderstood parts of the process, that it doesn't only come down to the numbers. There are a lot of other factors and how the business is being run to navigate. For those founders that are receiving a lot of inbound offers from private equity and are starting to consider whether they want to sell or not, what do you think the best first step is for them to take?
I think they need to reach out to a business broker or a firm and talk to them about coming in and having a conversation about that, because you need to kind of sit down and talk with a professional who's been through the process over and over again all year, to look at your company and say, yes, you are ready, or no, you're not ready, or you think it's worth 10 million, but it's worth 5.
Yes, on that note, how realistic are the offers that come in from private equity? Are they typically around where you see the deals panning out, or are they too high, too low?
It just depends on the company. So, like, I'd say private equity companies that have a niche, let's say HVAC, right? That's all they buy is HVAC companies. Usually they're right on the money. It's when they kind of venture out into something they're not used to, they don't really know why the numbers are the way they are or how they work. So I think for private equity companies that tend to just buy, 2 or 3 different types of companies, they're usually right on the money. But when they go outside of their field, there's a big learning curve.
Yeah, when they're inside their niche, it's typically they know they've done the deals before, so they really know more than others where the multiples can be. So it is interesting how that pans out. 'Cause I still do receive plenty of calls from private equity poking and prodding about where multiples may be or may not be when they're veering into a new industry. For younger professionals entering into the investment banking space, what guidance would you give them in terms of what can be automated and what can't be, no matter how many tools there are?
I mean, you can automate anything you want in today's world. That to me comes down to preference, right? And I'd say the number one thing on your radar that you have to look for is it closing business? Like if you're a new broker in the broker space, you can. Let me give you an example. So every day I get about 12 emails from marketing companies pitching MDR Associates. We've got the best email marketing campaign. We've got 3 million, manufacturing companies that we can send an email to. We have tried that in the past, right, and have had some success, but we found that email that's going out to that business owner from this marketing company, disguised as an email from me, is in the same email box with the 20 other marketing companies as well. So how do I know if that email stands out?
Right.
Well, I don't. It's luck of the draw for the most part, unless I proactively call that business owner, get them on the phone, and can spend 2 to 3 minutes asking them the right question. So it still comes down to personal contact for me.
Yeah, I do agree with you. A lot of it is about preference. Relationships in investment banking are really what does tend to drive the industry, and that one-on-one contact. Now, whether that or how that evolves as the baby boomers sell their companies and then Gen X becomes and the millennials become the next wave, I think that'll be interesting to see how it evolves. But I tend to think the personal human touch will remain throughout all those evolutions.
That, and I think the size of the company. Like if you're selling a $300,000 pet service company, but you're selling a $50 million company, those decisions aren't really made.
Right.
I think it depends on what you're doing and how big of a company you're trying to buy or sell. The bigger they are, the longer they take. Because now you've got a board of directors you have to deal with. You have 17 lawyers you have to deal with. You have 3 accounting firms you have to deal with. it just becomes massively overwhelming. But
True.
for little deals, it's a handshake and an exchange of cash for the most part.
Although I will say there are plenty of other documents and papers flying around for the small deals as
I
well.
mean, it's the same documents. You know, you have to have the purchase agreement, and if you're dealing with the bank, you have to have all that. You have to have, yeah, it's complicated, and so that's why I think they die so many times. Because for a lot of owners, they didn't go to business school or law school, and so when they see that 27-page document, they get kind of freaked out.
Or their eyes glaze over sometimes. It's
Yes.
too much to get through. Well, Todd, this has been a very thoughtful conversation. What stands out to me in our conversations and today is that in a world of increasing automation, you've kept your relationships deeply personal and relationship driven, and that judgment, trust, and emotional steadiness is really what shines through in your firm's success. And ultimately, selling a business isn't just transactional. It's a decision of trust, leadership, and alignment under pressure. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to the Madison Advisory AI podcast and spending time with us. Until next time, I'm Amanda Verner Thompson.